Hey guys, it's Scott McGillivray here with the Real Estate Rebel podcast. I'm really excited for today's podcast because I'm talking with Brandon Turner, the man in real estate who probably needs no introduction. He is the Bigger Pockets guy. That's how you guys know him. And I feel very fortunate that we get to connect today because I'm a fan of his. I've been listening to his stuff. He's got so much great information. I think one of his very first podcasts, we were trying to set something up, and so here we are, finally, at this point, able to connect. And we're touching on a topic that I don't know if either of us have covered this enough. So I thought this would be really appropriate, based on his experience and my experience. What are the next biggest opportunities in real estate? So what should every real estate investor have on their radar right now, based on what's going on in the world, based on the technology changes that are happening, and based on sort of all the new information that we have access to. So this is going to be really interesting. I'm actually hoping to learn just as much on this podcast as I am hoping to provide information. So stick around. This is going to be awesome. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you guys get your podcasts. And you know what? I'm not even going to beat around the bush. I'm just going to get to it and bring them in. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Dude, this is such an honor. I'm like such a little fangirl here because like I was watching Income Property back when I was like in diapers. Okay, not quite. You're not that old, but but like seriously, like my wife and I would watch that show every single day, and we're like, we're gonna do that, and we started buying small multifamily properties because of your show. Like you were like the guy. I mean, you are the guy. So this is a huge honor. So thank you.
Oh my God, bro. We got a lot to talk about. Our stories are very similar. And I think that a lot of people listening to this podcast, if you guys don't already know Brandon, you got to follow him. Bigger Pockets, one of the, maybe the biggest real estate podcast in the world. And I mean, how many episodes do you guys have?
Oh man, like 408 or something like that. Yeah, it was
408. You guys have as many podcasts as I do episodes of TV. So we're going toe to toe, bro.
Yes. I don't know. I think TV has us taken there. It's a few more people watch TV, I think. But man, that's
dude,
awesome.
It's so good. It's so good, and people are gonna have so many questions. So where can people connect with you other than through the podcast?
I'm like a 13-year-old girl, so Instagram, that's my thing. I haven't quite jumped into TikTok yet. Are you TikTok yet? Are you doing?
I'm not really TikToking, but Instagram is my jam. So
yeah, me too. Yeah, I love Instagram.
I love it. So we've got a cool subject today, and I know that you're at the cutting edge of real estate investing, and I was just sort of at the edge of talking about the fact that we have a similar story. We both started investing when we were in our early 20s. I started with student rental properties. I bought one and moved all my friends in, and then I bought one for my other friends and refinanced that one, then flipped properties. And, in my first 5 years, I was like really a hands-on, nitty-gritty, down and dirty real estate investor with, drywall dust in my hair at all times and a pickup truck full of stuff that I could always fix up my rental properties with. Just kind of hustling
twins.
Through.
Yeah, we are twins.
We're twins.
Identical. That's exactly it. We look the same too, but we also have the exact same story. Yes.
The same story. But it worked, right?
It did.
It worked. And what I love is that I'm 20 years in now. You're a few years behind me.
Yeah, like 13 now, I think, something like that. 13, 14.
13 or 14, which is amazing. And I'm always learning new things. And I would say in the 20 years that I have been investing, the last 2 years, I have seen things change faster than the 18 years previous. And I mean, I've been just like you. I do a lot of training. I take a tremendous amount of joy in seeing people get inspired and finding the freedom that real estate allows you to have as you build passive income and, sort of take on the dream idea of being able to do what you want when you want with money that you actually have. And now sometimes I feel like things are out of control. It's almost like things are out of control.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
so,
it's been nuts the last few years. You're right. Like things are just changing, and not just our industry, right? But every industry, just rapid technological changes. From everything from the internet leading that to weird things like 3D printing to all that stuff. It's just like the world is changing. It's not 20 years from now won't look like today.
Absolutely. So if we're going to tell people, or at least give people an idea of what the future is going to look like, as to, what are the trends you want to get ahead of, and where do you want to start, doing your research and getting more information. Let's talk about information first of all. I mean, what do you think? Let me ask you, what do you think of the old tried, tested, and true strategies is still relevant? And what information and access to information is important moving forward?
Ah, good question. So, all right. So the old tried and true strategies, if we're talking like buying a house and renting it out, like I don't know about you, but I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. And people are always going to need a place to live. There's more and more renters in that case. So renting, I don't see going away. So like the basics that we're talking about today, I'm assuming won't change much. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
Like, the buying and holding is
Yeah.
the king strategy of them all.
Yeah.
I see all these other gimmicks, like you get people into all these little, what I call micro techniques. It's like, oh, try this. You can bird dog and make
Yeah.
$5,000, or
Yeah.
you can do. And to me, it's a bit of like it's good to know those things, because sometimes I'll wholesale a property, not that I wanted to, but the offer came
Yep.
in and I was like, I'll take it and I know how to do it. But my strategy is always to buy them and keep them. But what about the idea of access to information versus the way it used to be? When I started, I think, you either had to buy a book,
Yep.
or from an infomercial, you could buy a whole bunch of
Yeah.
like DVDs.
Yep. Yeah. I remember the late night TV guys, with the slick back hair and like the real smooth, like women on the boat with the bikinis. Remember those commercials? Like they were just
Oh yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a phrase that I'm stealing this from Josh Dorkin. Josh is actually the one that founded Bigger Pockets, that, way even before I got around BP. Like I grew up in the BP community, but Josh founded it, and he used this phrase, and I love it. He said, information has been democratized. And I really like that, because in other words, like, the internet democratized information, where before it was hidden behind, like, yeah, you could buy a book, but that wouldn't give you everything. You could pay for a really, really, really expensive course, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 maybe, and you could get quote unquote everything. But even that was usually just like 4 books. Like one of my buddies recently went to one of those, things, and he spent 15 grand and he got 4 workbooks. That was what 15 grand got him. And I was like, man, I'm selling my books way too cheap. like I got a 1,000x the cost of my book here. But like, yeah, so I think information is just out there for everybody. And so now like literally anybody who wants to, who just has a little bit of ambition, can go on the internet and for free learn absolutely everything they need to know to be able to get started. Like you would you want to know how to flip houses in Cincinnati. I bet you could find an article called like how to flip houses in Cincinnati. And that is, it creates more competition, right? But it also, like, I don't know, gives more people hope. Like there is ways out of this stuff. I think the world is finally like waking up to the idea that you don't have to work that 9 to 5 for the next 50 years, just retire on, Social Security or whatever, and government cheese. Like there's better options out there. So
You know what I
that's
think?
why I see going.
I agree. Like you can find somebody in every town doing real estate investing.
Yeah.
And I think where I see this going, what I've noticed a lot is that it used to be, at least when I started, there were a couple gurus. Like if you didn't get your information from these 4, super gurus in real estate, there was nowhere else to get anything. I mean, You could buy a book, you could get the DVDs, you could go to a seminar, whatever. Whereas now, like you said, you can look up, Mary Jane in Cincinnati, who wholesales houses or flip houses. Not only can you get information from her, but you can now probably follow her on Instagram and DM her, and she does like some sort of webinar. So the information has gotten so abundant. I think for real estate investors, what I see, because of the thousands of people I've trained through all of our events, what's happening now is that a lot of these real estate investors are creating their own micro brands, and they're becoming these like micro influencers in real estate, and running their own sessions, training sessions, support sessions. They're monetizing the training the same way a bunch of us have done, while they're investing. Like they're selling their knowledge while doing it, which is really cool. So I think that what I've been telling a lot of people who are hungry at this, and the people who are really hustling at it, I'm like, post it all on your social media.
Yep.
And when people reach out to you, have a way to capture that lead. I mean, you can do it through a podcast. You can do it through a social media platform or a website. And you can hold small sessions and make some money on the side and find investors, because the next thing is, how do you get the money is a big thing, and where's the money coming from in the future? So it's really like, if you want to be a real estate investor now, you should think about being a real estate investor and a trainer at the same time, because so many people want this information.
Yeah, just the idea of like personal brand, like that you are not just, John Smith from whatever, but you are a real estate brand. Like, you are somebody that people look up to and trust. Like, whether or not it's good or bad, we just look up to influencers online. Like, you see them have a big Facebook following, big Instagram, big TikTok. You're like, oh, they must know what they're doing. So if you want to raise money in the future and you want to get people to, I found actually one of the biggest assets of being a personal brand is the ability to hire people, because now people want to come work with me, and they can, you pick the best people to work with. And so, starting to build that personal brand right now, whether it's a podcast or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. And it doesn't have to be, the next, Income Property or Bigger Pockets or any of those things, right? You can literally just be like, you're the guy in your town that everyone just knows. It's like, oh yeah, that's the person that does duplexes. We should talk to them.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And the other thing too, that I find is that once you have that reputation, it solves the second problem, which is access to capital and finding 100%. People who trust you and are willing to invest in you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, in order to raise money, right, you have to be like, people have to know who you are, they have to like you, and they have to trust you. All three of those things, right?
Yes.
Know, like, and trust. And social media builds knowledge, likability, and trust better than anything else. And it's absurd, right? But the more I see you post on Instagram, the more I like, the more I know, like, and trust you. You're not even proving how good you are. You're just like talking about your family. And I'm like, I like this guy. I'd give him my money. Or like, it's stupid, but that's just how humans work. It's not logical. So,
it's crazy. And I think that's the big thing. Like, how does access to funds change now that the world is changing? I think everybody, typically when somebody comes to me and they don't know much about real estate investing, they're like, I don't know where to get the money. Where do I get the money? Right. So where do you suggest people start thinking about these things?
Yeah, I like to say there's three things you need to put together a deal. There's like the knowledge. You have to know what you're doing to put together a deal. You have to have the hustle or the action, right? You have to actually do the stuff, make the offers, manage the contractors, whatever. And then there's the money. And the thing people get they shut down over is they think they have to have all three. In reality, you only really need like two of those. Like, if you don't have the money, get the knowledge, get the hustle down, and you will find people. For case in point, I've got a buddy out here in Maui, in Hawaii, here where I live, and his name's Greg. He came to me, and he had a lot of knowledge. He'd read every book, and he had listened to every podcast I'd ever done, and he really had the knowledge. And then he also would take action all the time. He was always looking at deals, showing me stuff. We partnered together. So this year alone, I think we made, $250,000 roughly flipping houses. I've put in the down payment. We got, I figure out the financing. He just brings the hustle, and the knowledge. We both have some knowledge, but he brings all the hustle. I don't do anything. He does no money down flipping, essentially. He also does some other rentals as well. And he does it because, he has the hustle and the knowledge. And so if you're getting started, just get really, really knowledgeable and know what you're doing, and then take a lot of action. You bring a great deal to an experienced investor, they're going to work with you on it, because it's hard to find good deals right now. That's the more valuable skill.
Yes.
It's not money. That's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is your ability to take action.
The ability to find the properties. I say that all the time. I invest with a bunch of people. It's usually my property managers, because they know as they find me more properties, then I bring the money to the table, they get more work, or I hire them to be the contractors. It's finding these people to help you find the properties, because a lot of them aren't in our local markets. I mean, you're in Maui. That's one of the toughest, cash flowing markets out there. So you got to be doing a lot of remote purchasing.
Yeah. We're buying all over the place. Not in Canada yet, but we're buying all over the US, and mostly buying big mobile home parks, which is just a different.
Yeah. Don't buy anything in Canada. There's nothing left.
Yeah,
There's nothing to see here.
I actually get this thing all the time from people. I see these, these live webinars, or I do an Instagram live or whatever. And people are always say, well, I'm in Canada and you can't find deals. There are no deals in Canada. And I'm always like, okay, well, I guess my friends in Canada, they're just making everything up. They're just lying.
I find it's easier to be a big fish in a small pond than it is to try to tackle, the big cities. And I think that's where people are short-sighted. They live in a big city. They look 2 blocks in every direction, and they're like, it's not possible to do this in the whole country. It's
Yep.
not possible. It's like, yeah, drive half an hour, maybe an hour, and all of a sudden the numbers start to work a lot better.
That is such a good point. And people just, yeah, they look at like the most competitive areas. Like they're like, well, I can't find anything in Atlanta, like proper. And I'm like, well, go outside 2 hours. You'll find properties for like dirt cheap. And yeah, like, you have to know those markets. Doesn't mean you can just like buy anything, of course. But yeah, those properties exist all over the place. Like I bought my first 25, 30, 40 units, something like that, all in Grays Harbor, Washington, population of like, I don't know, 50,000, 40,000, like
Yeah.
2 hours from anything. Like it was just like out in the middle of nowhere. Like my town I lived in had 3,000 people, the specific town, and I would buy stuff there because I became the big fish in that town. People knew me as the real estate guy. They bring deals to me because I'm the guy, and I understand the market.
Yes.
I'm still looking there right now. I got a big commercial property I'm trying to close. They're trying to put it under contract. We'll see in the next day or two. But
it's amazing. I love hearing the stories and the consistencies, because that's the same as me. I started in a university town, college town, and again, it was, not a big area, and they were smaller price points, decent rents, easy to find contractors, and I became the guy for, some of the bigger real estate agents in the area. They're like, well, if it's an investment property, we take it to Scott because he's buying all of these things. And then when I went, like, the Toronto market, for instance, is one of the toughest in the world. I was super intimidated. It took me years before I started buying anything because I was competing with institutional investors. And yeah, so I'm still a bigger fan of going to smaller markets because I get better returns. And so that makes sense. I usually give people that advice. I'm like, don't try to tackle the biggest markets when you're getting into real estate investing. Find those pockets and those niche markets where there's still good profitability and it hasn't been tapped out.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Because as the information gets more and more out there, and as more and more people get into this real estate thing, then they're all focused on the big cities. That's where they all live. So yeah, if you wanna make a splash, get outside of it. Now, real quick, if I could go back, I want to leave this. We talked about how information is out there, and it almost sounds like that's a good thing. That there's more information for everyone. But in reality, what I think that actually what happens is becoming focused is just becoming more and more important. It's more and more difficult to focus, right? There's this great quote from a guy named Derek Sivers who said, he's like a TED Talk guy. He's been on Tim Ferriss's podcast, but he once said, if more information was the answer, we would all be billionaires with perfect abs. Because like we all know how to get, a six pack. We all know how to run a marathon. We all know how to do all this stuff, improve our marriage, be a better parent, whatever. But we just don't do it. And because like we're so distracted by a million things. So today, like the biggest enemy to our success in real estate is honestly probably like this, like our phones and TikTok and Instagram. And it's all those distractions pulling you, and all the micro influencers in real estate telling you, no, you should only do wholesaling. That's the best thing for new investors. No, you should do burr investing. You should house hack. And everyone's got this like thing, and that's the thing. And so because of that, people like they don't pick a choice. They just jump from thing to thing and float, and they're trying to build so many bridges to their dream island that no bridge ever gets completed. I think that's a huge danger.
That is a huge danger. It's funny, I was thinking about that when we were talking about all the the bloggers and everybody out there. Yeah. There's more people talking about real estate than actually doing real estate. I think that's key. And there's a few people, and you're one of them, who are authentically talking about the things you're doing and not just rambling on about stuff that you have no practice in. So I always say, you need to be part of a network of active investors. You need to be part of a doing community, not just an information community, because there's information everywhere, and information there's nothing to it without action. Similar to your quote, I like to say, if access to information were the key to wealth, then librarians would all be billionaires. It's all right there.
Yeah,
right?
That's great.
So it totally makes sense. And what, maybe for the future, what's going to be more important is dialing it down again and finding a new way to get credible information to sort through all the noise. So that could be good for you and me. That could be good for you and me.
It could be good. Yeah. And I think that the world of different technology like podcasting, I think it sometimes feels like podcasting is getting crowded, but in reality, like if you look at the number of blogs that are out there, like in the number of, websites that are out there, and the number of like even radio channels out there, like podcasting is just beginning. I think like we're going to see a lot. I mean, it's not, what is it? 90% of cars still don't have podcasting ability just to press a button, but 5 years from now, every car will have press a button, listen to a podcast. And so I think that again, more information out there, more opportunity for people to be able to monetize that through becoming a personal brand, but also more information to learn your specific niche that you drilled in on. So again, I think that's going to change a lot.
What about it? What about how tech? Let's keep on that technology thing for a second, because some of the biggest changes I've seen in the last few years is the ability to do your investing remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, you and I are on a Zoom call here. Like, we're talking half a world apart. You're in Hawaii, I'm in Toronto, and we can connect real time. I can do this with my property managers. I can do this as a presentation to my investors. That's a new thing, of a new level of trust when you can see what's going on. Tomorrow I have 2 hours of Zoom and FaceTime calls with my realtors, because I can't be there. I can't cross the border. So they're going to be walking through properties, giving me tours of properties. And, this is how I'm buying real estate, from sitting in this chair, just looking at the math and seeing the visuals. So there's that side of the technology, which is interesting. But the other side, which is definitely, I think it's driving prices up, is the fact that, you can qualify for financing online. You can, you can rent a property through these online rental portals that, like, think about short-term vacation rentals for a second. 20 years ago, you had to put a classified ad in the newspaper, and if you didn't get it rented today, you were in the garbage. Like, the ability for technology to streamline this, the ability for me to just go on my phone and look at the cameras on my properties, or unlock the door for my renters. That type of stuff is making our jobs more profitable and more accessible for people. So I see all of that driving prices even higher in the future.
Me too. And I think what we'll see is a leveling. We talked about different markets are really expensive, with some are cheap, get outside the city. I think over the next 10 years or so, we're going to see a leveling of prices. And I don't mean that the expensive cities are going to come down. I think that everything else is just going to rise. And so kind of like, I think this is a global thing as well. The fact that you can still get stuff in China or India for just, dirt cheap right now because their wages are so, I think that as technology changes, all those things have to level out. Like, we're becoming more of a global economy, and the same is true with local real estate. So I think now is an amazing time to get into real estate, because I don't think we're going to see these prices, especially in the US. Like, I don't follow a lot of other places necessarily, but like, I know that if you're trying to buy rentals in like Australia, or even in like most places in Europe, it's absurd. They're like, what a property how little it rents for compared to how much you have to buy it for. So like, you can't just go buy cash flow in most other places in the world. Like, you don't just buy a property and make money your first year. That would be absurd. In America, you still do that. I don't think that's going to last another 20, in 20 years from now. I think we'll be a lot more like Europe, or a lot more like those other countries. So that's what I expect.
I love the idea of it's going to flatten, and it's not because the peak is going to come down. It's because the bottom's coming up. Yeah. And I'm seeing this in a lot of the small towns I've invested in the US and even in Canada, where prices are starting to go up by double digits. And COVID and the pandemic, it's not so much that it changed real estate as much as it pushed things and trends that were already happening even faster. Yes. So, the terms that I've been hearing is like the 90-minute move, maybe moving 90 minutes from the city in order to be able to afford something better and still keep your job. I've heard skip the city, buy the cottage, right? Like, people are basically taking their money and they're putting it further and further away from these urban centers, because you can still have a career, you can still have a good income, but you can have a lifestyle that's a little more relaxing. So it's funny that you brought it up, because I was talking internally with my team about this, about the fact that we need to really focus on some of these smaller communities and the ability to, buy many of them before they start to see absurd pressure from the urban centers. So that's a huge thing that technology is driving, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. You know what interesting about the whole COVID thing is, I like to wrap this in this analogy of like, so my dad, he's an older guy, retired now, and he's going, like, he's bored, like, at home, and he wants to earn some more money. So he's going back to his old job, and his old job is paying him like almost nothing, and he started doing some other stuff. He's making like almost like nothing, and I hope he doesn't listen to this because I feel bad. But like, and I'm like, Dad, why don't you just go drive for Uber? You will make more money driving for Uber than you would do this. And he's like, I don't know how that Uber stuff works. I'm like, I can teach you in like 10 minutes how to set up your car in Uber, and you would love it. He would drive around. He loves talking, and like, just he's got that gift of gab. So he will talk all day, and he'll love it. He won't do it. But if somebody forced him to go drive Uber for just 15 minutes, if he had a reason to have to do it, all of a sudden he'd be like, this is the greatest thing ever. Why don't I do this continually? The same thing is true for COVID with a lot of these things. Like they forced us, like you said, to where technology was headed anyway. They forced us that way. Technology was headed out of the city and into the suburbs. It was pushing people onto Zoom. But now that everyone's using Zoom, like, I don't think you can put that, what's the phrase, like cork back in the bottle. Like, I think, yeah, there's a thing, because everyone was all of a sudden forced to drive Uber for a while, to keep beating that analogy. And now they're not going to stop. And so I think that we are seeing just a fundamental shift in the way people work, the way people live, the way people function. And that's going to affect, again, that leveling of prices as it pushes outward from the cities.
So this brings me to something that seems to fascinate audiences when I talk to them. And I would love to hear what you're doing as well, which is the types of investments that you're buying now that a lot of people wouldn't have on their radar. So I would say most people, they're like, oh, buying real estate is buying a single family home. And we kind of broke and shattered that norm and taught people how to get into student rentals and how to get into multi-units. But there's even more margin to be made in some of the not so common investment opportunities out there. Is there anything that you've started to do or that you're looking at that's kind of different that might be interesting?
Yeah. So I had this problem a few years ago, right? This is going to sound like a, poor Brandon problem, but I had extra money and I'm like, what do I do with this extra money? Right. I'm like, I got to put it somewhere. Right. It's like, I got to invest. And so like, I actually had slowed down my investing a lot. Like maybe 3 years ago, I slowed down. I was buying a couple things, flipping a couple houses, really slowed down. And then, I had extra money coming in, and I was like, well, I'm kind of bored. Like I need to do some more real estate, and I want to stay, relevant in the industry. I want to create more wealth, all that. So anyway, so I started looking around, and I realized that there's a massive problem in our country, and I think most countries right now, where, like we talked about, prices are going to keep going up. I think we're going to see Europe level prices here in North America, and it's going to just keep getting that way. But if you look at wages, they're not going up even close to at the same clip. Like they're very much like staying steady. I mean, like I'm sure we all heard the stats of like, I don't know, the minimum wage today would be like the equivalent of like, I don't know, $3 an hour years ago or whatever. Like the point being like, yeah, people today make way less money than they ever did in the past. Like the lower income people, and the lower income people, that's like 40% of America, let's say, are like people struggling paycheck to paycheck, having a hard time. Most of the building that is being done, there's a lot of building being done in the world. Almost all of it, like I think it was 80 or 90%, is being done at the high end of the market. So here we are, we're filling the high end of the market with these really nice properties, but still most people at the low end can't afford it. So where I think a lot of opportunity lies are in the affordable housing realm. I think that is an increasing problem. I don't invest for tomorrow, and you're the same way, right? We don't invest just to, for tomorrow or the next day for the next day. We invest for where the future is going 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Yes.
So when I look at a problem that's growing and is only getting worse, and there is no sign of the government, I'd say either government's like fixing this problem necessarily, it's that there's an increasing problem. So anyway, so all that said is we're getting into mobile home parks because that's like the last bastion of affordable housing in America. Yeah. And we're also doing a little bit of like the lower income apartments. We have a thing called Section 8 here. I don't know if you guys have that with like the government.
I've bought Section 8 housing back in 2009, 10, 11. That was pretty popular. Yep. And I was down in Florida. Oh my God. It was in about 4 or 5 different states, and Section 8 was always great because you had a certain guaranteed amount coming in, but it's a lot of work too.
Yeah. All these things are not necessarily easy. And that's what makes people also shy away from them. Like, oh, I would never buy a mobile home park. Like, what, you're going to be a trailer park trash? Like there's so many like stigmas against those industries.
But it's huge. You're right. Look at mobile home parks are a big deal right now. And they're going to continue to be a big deal as people vacation nationally, not internationally.
Yep.
The other big thing that I've been on to, and I bought one last weekend, are what these camps. I'm buying camps.
Oh, that's cool. I don't know.
Yeah, it's random. And that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I got a few virtual tours in upstate New York, like in the Finger Lakes. We're looking at the Catskills, and I'm looking at these camps that have all these little cabins, right? It's sort of like you got trailer parks, and then like just a micro smidge above it, you get these camps. Now I call them camps. Some of them are fishing lodges.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them have RV parks attached to them. But what's wild is when you look at the conversions and upgrades that we do to them versus having to buy, a dozen or 15 cottages. If I had to buy 15 waterfront properties versus buying a camp with 15 cabins, I'm getting it for a quarter or maybe even a fifth of what it would have cost me. So I can put more into the renovation, and then I'm getting the same rents, because when someone comes to rent it, they don't care if it's on a large site that's not fully owned, independently by themselves, or if it's sitting by itself close to a bunch of neighbors. Like, it's the same rental rates. And so we're doing these camp conversions, and it is going extremely well so far. It's still early days, but much like you, I try not to get into buying one thing at a time anymore. It's like I love it. You're like, oh, I got a problem. I got too much money. But it's true. You have too much equity, and you have access to too much. And if you're not deploying it, you're sitting there saying, what am I doing? I'm an idiot. I'm not taking my own advice. I got to get that money out there, get it working. So I get it. So we're looking for things, but I've basically forbidden myself to buy anything that's got less than 12 units. If it's got less than 12 units and I see it and I like it, I'm like, ooh, I know how to do that, because I've been doing that my whole life. I'm like, you're forbidden. Give it to somebody else, because I need to push myself forward and try to find new frontiers and new avenues. And with the, online rental portals, with the ability to remotely manage my properties, which has gotten so much easier, I'm digging into these new frontiers of ideas and properties, and just camps has just been the thing. I bought 2 in the last month, and I'm hoping to get a couple more. And it's a lot of work to convert them, but man, what a crazy, cool little niche I've gotten myself into there.
That's exactly what that is. That little niche, this is what you own. And like, people might be like, oh, Scott's buying campgrounds. Okay, that must be the best investment. Or Brandon's buying mobile home parks. That must be the best. Like, what's funny is like, no, like they're cool. I'm sure like you like them for the reasons that and I like my stuff. But it's more important. This is from the book Traction. I love this quote. The guy said, it's more important that you decide than what you decide. And again, to go back to like there's so many micro influencers telling you should do this or that, like it all works. I could go point out a multimillionaire in every single solitary aspect of real estate. Some guy made millions of dollars, I'm sure, building like little adobe huts in the middle of the desert somewhere. I'm sure you could find that. A guy who made millions off camping and then mobile homes and, all this stuff like RVs, everything. So it doesn't really matter. It all kind of works. But what you're doing is you're becoming like an expert of that. You're becoming like the guy. And I'm trying to be the guy with the mobile home park stuff. Like, how do you become that person that you just dive into these unique little segments of the real estate? I think that's where there's going to be a lot of money to be made, because most people don't look there. They just ignore it.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to evolve. Like you have to use the same math. The math doesn't change. That's what's great. Yep. Once you understand the metrics, which aren't too complicated, now it's just finding different ways to apply it. And, one of the other things that I'm starting to look at are some of these vacating commercial spaces. It started already what I called we were looking at these plazas and stuff that weren't what I called Amazon proof. So if Amazon could replace the tenants that were in a plaza, I wasn't interested in buying that plaza, because it's like everything that you sell, I can buy online. So we were always looking for these places that had, a foot doctor. Like, you can't order a foot doctor online, right? Or even an eyeglasses store. You may have to go into there. So looking now at all this vacant commercial space, we're looking at opportunities to convert them, because they're cheap, into residential, multi-residential. So there's so many opportunities. Like you said, you got to just pick something, run the numbers, find a way to make it work, and then become that person. Become the person that does that in that area. And you can kind of get a foothold from there and grow.
You know what's funny is I really want to do the campground thing. Actually, exactly what you're doing. I want to do it out here in Maui. There's like one campground on the entire island, and like prices are crazy. You want to stay at a hotel here, it's $1,000 a night. So I'm like, man, you'd be really fun is to buy a cool piece of land, put a bunch of little cabins on it. Like make it like glamping or whatever the phrase. Like just make it a nice campground, big fire, community kind of pit in the middle, and rent that thing out. I could get hundreds a month. But then I look at that and I'm like, okay, this is a cool idea. It's not a cool idea for me, because that's not my thing. I have to stay focused on what I'm good at right now. And if I wanted to pursue that, then I have to I need to go all in on that, I think, and become good at that, because I can't compete. The competition's too stiff and the market's too competitive everywhere to just like wander into stuff. Like it isn't like, 2010 or 11 where you just like, cover your eyes and throw a rock and whatever you hit, you can buy and make a ton of money on. Like this is yeah. I think this, to go back to where real estate's headed, I think it's just becoming more sophisticated. I think more and more, especially like when I look at mobile home park, like, the whole like industry 10, 20 years ago, there was 50,000 parks in the US, and out of them, like there was probably 45,000 owners. I think in 10 years from now, there's going to be about 40 owners that own all 50,000. And those ones are going to be companies like mine that are like really, really sophisticated, and they have, everything has been tracked and metrics. So again, if you want to compete in today's world and going forward, I think you just have to get better. You can't just accidentally buy property anymore.
It doesn't happen. Wealth does not happen by accident. Yep. This is all very calculated. The good news is that the math isn't, high level crazy stuff. It's not difficult math. It's just a matter of sitting down and being disciplined and saying, hey, the numbers work. And then don't discriminate on what the property is. It can be an RV park. It can be a camp. It can be a duplex, a student rental, or vacation rental. Like, why discriminate? If the numbers work, embrace it, right? Like, let's do this.
Yeah, real estate's real estate in a lot of ways. Like it's kind of like business is business. I feel like the last couple of years, I've really like shifted my like mindset from I'm a real estate investor, I'm nitty gritty, I can do my own work, all that. Like I've really shifted the last maybe even 5 years to I am a business owner. And the thing I happen to trade in right now happens to be chunks of land, but I could trade in t-shirts if I really wanted to and apply the same principles that I do of leadership and management and setting goals and expectations and holding people accountable to those things. That skill applies to all of it, like everything that you do. And so I'm always encouraging people to try to think a little bit higher level than just like, how do I buy this duplex? To instead be thinking like, how do I create a business that can buy duplexes? It's a subtle shift, but I think it's important because it translates to everything you do.
Man, I love it. We could go on. We're going to have to go for a beer when we're allowed to like sit down in person or something.
I know. When they let us through the borders.
They let us through the borders. I love that island. I've been there several times, but it's been too long. So, but listen, there's so much to talk about. Hopefully we'll book this again.
For sure. We'll get you on the BP podcast now, and we'll
I'm going to come and do Bigger Pockets with you. Yes. So we'll hopefully there was some content and some takeaways for all the people that are hungry for, what can I do next? What are my next big things? So thanks so much, Brandon. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. This has been it's been an honor.
All right, bud. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Guys, that was Brandon Turner, the super successful podcaster of Bigger Pockets. He's such a great guy. I've learned so much from him. And we were just talking about the big opportunities in real estate that we're sort of focusing on and that we're seeing trends in, trying to make sure that you guys have the latest and greatest information. If you want more from Brandon, you can follow him on Instagram. That's what he said. He's totally up to date on Instagram. Brandon Turner. And obviously you should be following Bigger Pockets podcast if you're not already listening to it. I'm Scott McGillivray. This has been the Real Estate Rebel. Make sure you like us, follow us, subscribe, leave lots of comments. We've got a Facebook group where we go in and answer your comments, the Real Estate Rebel on Facebook. Hopefully you guys loved it. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much.